Welcome everyone. And this live session of our circular industries talks. As you know, we have these regular meetings every Wednesday morning about all kinds of issues related to circular economy, industries related to circular economy, and those are mostly online. But today we have a special session of these circular industries talks, and that will be focused on batteries. So we have some special guests here also that will give guest presentations. I'm really happy to see you guys here, and also welcome to the people that are online. And we'll be talking about batteries, and it's of course not for nothing that we're talking about batteries. We all know that the renewable energy transition that we are currently in requires a lot of materials in terms of wind turbines, solar cells, the grid that has to be expanded, has to be made smart, has to be interconnected, but also, of course, electric vehicles. If you look at the projections that are there from the International Energy Agency, you can see that if you look at the total material demand in 2040 and 2050, then the bulk of those materials are actually embedded in batteries for EVs mainly, and also of course some for stationary storage. So this is really the bulk applications if it comes to materials like, well, the battery chemistries as they are at the moment, with manganese and cobalt and nickel, but also lithium, of course, that are all included in the batteries as we know them. We also know that the world of batteries is not static. A lot of new batteries are being produced in the labs at the moment. Solid-state batteries, sodium-based batteries instead of lithium, silicon anode cathodes instead of graphite. So you have all these different types of technologies that are in the labs at the moment and are waiting to get the momentum to jump out and also change completely the thing. There was a question about whether there's a presentation. There's no presentation, I'm just talking from my slides, but it will just be a short introduction anyways. We also know, of course, that the projections for EVs are very high. If you look at the future of EV transportation, you can see an exponential growth there, and I think that will only go faster in the future simply because, well, it doesn't make sense for car companies to invest in internal combustion engines when they know that the future is in EVs. So this will be kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, once the guidelines are there, and once the policies are there, and that in the future we will not be using and producing EV or internal combustion engine anymore, we will move to EVs, and that's just, that will be self-propelling. We also know that there's a lot of issues related to that. It's issues related to, well, the materials that we need. Can we get all these materials in the time period that we have until 2050? It's not that we are lacking resources in the ground. It's not that we're lacking ores or deposits out there. It is really the question, can we extract it as quickly as we need in order to make all these EVs by 2040 or 2050? So that is an issue, and what you can see is that there's a huge delay often between, let's say, the first question about the first price increase and then mining operations that have to start from scratch. Often it takes 10, 15 years to start a new mine. So there's a huge delay there. And only last week I was talking also to a couple of mining companies, and they kind of, re-emphasize what I'm already always saying, is that something like, well, it's if the prices are relatively low, like they are now for lithium and copper, and relatively low prices at the moment, there has been a dip in the prices even, there's no incentive to invest in new mines. And once the prices are increasing, then suddenly you have a jump in prices, and then you're too late because you have to start investing, and then, well, that's 10, 15 years later before these mines are operational. So also these mining companies are kind of in a limbo. Should we invest in new mines or not? They know that the demand is coming, but it's not there yet, so there's no, let's say, demand at this moment, but they do see indeed these demands coming for the future. So there's also geopolitics, of course, involved in that. If you look at by far the biggest battery producer in the world is China at this moment, and you can see that with the Inflation Reduction Act in the US, but also with the Net Zero Industries Act from the EU. You can see that the EU and also the US is trying to get the supply chains within their own boundaries again. They want to support battery production, they want to support EV production, they even want to support the production of the raw materials and the mining operations that are needed for actually making this happen. So this is all something that is also from a geopolitical perspective. I think this is really something that is that is important, and it's an issue that we are confronted with and we have to deal with somehow, and it's something that is happening right at this moment. We also, of course, want our resources to be responsibly sourced. We want to have products that are free of child labor. We want to make sure that environmental issues are not too big, let's say, and the environmental issues can be solved also. So that's why we also need product passports, that's why we need supply chain mapping, that's why we need traceability of our supply chains in order to quantify, let's say, the impacts of these supply chains in the total picture. So responsible sourcing is another aspect of the batteries, let's say, and the demand for raw materials from these batteries. And then one final point, which will also be addressed during one of the presentations here, is circularity. And once we are not a mining country in the Netherlands, for example, we don't have any metal mines at this moment. But what I always tell policymakers is, yes, we're not a mining country now, but we will be an urban mining country in, let's say, 30 years from now, because then we will have all this stuff in our economy in the form of wind turbines, solar cells, and EVs. So we can be an urban mining country if we want to be, because all these resources will be in this economy at a certain moment. But of course, if you want to do that, then you have to organize the system in a circular way. That means that we have to design our products in such a way that they can be reused, that their lifetime can be extended, and in the end, of course, that the materials that are in those products can be recycled, especially for batteries. There's a huge infrastructure to be built to collect these batteries, to recycle these batteries, to get all the valuable materials out. That is a key thing that we have to do in order to make this EV infrastructure and battery infrastructure sustainable. All those things will be addressed in many of the presentations that we will be seeing today. We will have, how many? 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4 presentations today. And yeah, I think we should just start with our first presenter, and that will be Mark Weijers. He's a PhD candidate at chemical engineering at TU Delft. So Mark, I would like to give you the floor.
I've got your slides up here.
Perfect. Is there a clicker maybe?
Yeah, let me see. The screen is there. Yeah, so this one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Do we have a clicker?
There's a clicker here. Is it? I don't know.
It's operational.
Yeah, you have to put in the
Yeah, sure.
Let me help you with that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for having me here in this wonderful afternoon. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Weijers. I'm in my last year of my PhD trajectory, and I've worked for 3 years in electric vehicle batteries. And in my 4th year, I started to think about my future career, essentially. So what am I going to do in the coming 10 to 20 years, either as academic or in industry? I want to have a job in Europe. I'm a Dutch citizen. And in Europe, we decided as European Commission that a piece of legislation is now in place, which is called the Green Deal. The Green Deal has impact for every citizen and every industry in Europe, and also for the way we do things, essentially. And for me, this was a nice opportunity to have a thought experiment to see what the implications are for battery technology specifically. So the outline for today is, of course, we have to know what is the Green Deal. And then we can see which applications can be fit, well, where batteries can be fit in for which applications. For this, we have to know what the performance indicators are for certain batteries, but also for these applications. And then we can select a few candidate chemistries, which as academics, in academia we can start to test, and in industry we might be able to scale up. And finally, I want to touch upon the question also on the carbon neutrality, which is part of this Green Deal. But first off, the Green Deal. In 2021, the European Commission decided to implement this piece of legislation to enhance the climate. Essentially, it has three key figures. Europe wants to be climate neutral in 2050. We want to emit a lot less greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 already, so it's 7 years from now. And finally, we want to plant a lot of trees. Well, these first two parts have quite an implication for well, opportunity for battery development, but also we have to think on how we develop our batteries. First of all, touched upon before, we have to do quite a deal of recycling to ensure that we remain a climate neutral in climate neutral state, and well, by electrifying both our energy systems, we can reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions accordingly. And there's a huge opportunity in electrification and storage of energy from sustainable sources like solar or wind. And also the transport sector, of course, is currently very much dependent on fossil fuels, and their electrification is also one of the prime options, let's say. Well, let's first look at the grid energy storage. This first, whenever we start on electrification, whenever you consider the complete energy use of the European Union, we use quite a bit of oil, currently a lot of gas. When we start electrification, also we can use our energy much more energy efficient, essentially. And if you do a bit of a calculation, you can reduce the amount of energy used by about 25% by just converting to energy to an energy system on itself. So to remain into electric energy is a nice opportunity to also reduce our energy use as well. For our electric grid, we have a huge need of energy storage, and therefore the energy storage solution itself needs to have a low cost. Since we can use quite some area for energy storage, we don't need a high energy density. So for this purpose, the redox flow battery is a nice type of battery in which the electrolysis part, the part where the reaction takes place, and the storage facilities are split up. With using such a system, we can expand the amount of storage without having to expand on the amount of capacity. And therefore, we can build large storage vessels to store for a longer duration a lot of energy without essentially having a huge impact on power. This is, well, in theory, this is the nicest way of storing our electricity. So we can use redox couples like iron or an organic solution. But if you look at what currently the market is doing, essentially when you this is an analysis on 2021 on the cost of storing energy. The cheapest solution per megawatt hour is still lithium ion. They calculated several cases, which is the amount of hour discharge and the amount of discharges per year. And in all these cases, lithium ion is one of the best chemistries to use. Then the second up is the chromium, gelated chromium with iron cyanide chemistry. But all the other solutions, which potentially are cheap minerals, in the end have a higher investment cost, and therefore currently are not marketable. One which stands out is the vanadium couple. Vanadium there's quite some startups currently in vanadium. It's because the amount of vanadium available is potentially very high. But there we have a problem with the amount of mines which is currently there on vanadium. The price of the vanadium pentoxide is still too high to make it to make it compete with the lithium ion chemistry. So here we see that lithium ion essentially wins in terms of the economy of scale. Currently, lithium ion is developed for both the electric vehicle batteries, and therefore those batteries are produced at a huge scale. Well, these are all mineral type of chemistries. We can also have a look at the organic type of chemistries. We can there's quite some options, and these options we can mine essentially from sources like biomass. Well, there's a negative type and positive type of redox chemistry available in aqueous processing. The biggest problem with this kind of chemistry currently is that it's not stable. The duration of this chemistry, whenever you store it in large vessels, also thermal instability, they tend to show side reactions, degrade, and they cannot compete currently with the mineral chemistries. Some nice trends which are going on in general in redox flow batteries is that academia at least is trying to combine solar panels, the semiconductors of solar panels, with the redox couple of your battery to make the essentially the whole process of storing energy more efficient. It's very, very far from application, I have to say. A bit closer to application is membrane-brainless redox. Whenever you break down the cost of a redox flow battery, the membrane is one of the most pricey items. Also, they try to solve this by have two phases. Typically one very saline phase and one more organic phase, which are not miscible, and therefore they show a phase split in your electrolyzer. Hypothetically, this also yields lower resistance losses. And then finally, when considering not redox flow but grid battery storage, there's a nice spin-off from the TU Delft as well, which tries to, well, actually is making megawatt-hour scale batteries, which start to produce hydrogen whenever they're fully charged. This was seen as a downside. First, of course, you don't want unwanted hydrogen production, but near plants which can use hydrogen in their plant itself, it's seen as a benefit, and currently they successfully are putting down frame containers with this battleizer system. Okay, but it seems that grid battery storage is not very problematic in terms of Green Deal. We have minerals which are quite abundant already, and there's a lot of possible chemistries available. Now let's look at electric vehicles, because indeed this one is more of a challenge. Now, the European Commission has set out a so-called roadmap on the development of electric vehicle batteries in Europe. And what you can see, we're currently here, is that they targeted mostly the nickel, manganese, cobalt oxides, going towards higher nickel contents, but not varying too much on the cathode side. On the anode side, well, starting from titanate, going to graphite, silicon, and then finally beyond 2025, the lithium metal. And the electrolyte and the anode development needs to go hand in hand. Whenever you start to talk about lithium metal, you need, well, most people think you need some solid electrolytes to prevent the growth of lithium metal towards the cathode. Well, the roadmap itself is quite straightforward. We can see where we need to go. But I want to touch upon maybe a thing which is not stated too often. When you look at the abundance of the available minerals, this is a very old paper, 1976, but more or less the distribution of these minerals hasn't changed in the last 40 years, I think. When you look for the nickel, the manganese, and the cobalt, these are these very narrow slits over here. And lithium is somewhat more available over here. So the amount of these minerals available, which is needed for such a huge scale-up, might become problematic, let's say. And the European Commission, another department, the Mining Commission, actually acknowledges this. If you look at the chemistry proposed for the lithium batteries, you see that a lot of these compounds are acknowledged as strategic materials, so not as abundant as we would like to see to have it freely available. And whenever you go back to essentially the chart before, I highlighted the part which is then becomes problematic. It's almost all of the chemistry which essentially is stated here. And there, I think we need also to look at alternatives. Okay, so we know this system works nice. There's a lot of development in academia on this as well. I've worked on this system for 3 years. Aren't there other options? Let's have a look at what do we actually want out of an electric vehicle battery. So we want to have a battery which is dense in energy, has a low weight, can be charged in a fast rate, and is affordable finally. I depicted 3 types of lines, action radius for batteries in one discharge. So let's say if you take your Tesla Model 3 from Delft, you can go to approximately Luxembourg. The blue target is whenever you fully develop the lithium metal chemistry, you can go as far as Hamburg, let's say. With this in mind, what would alternative chemistries do? How far could you actually drive with these cars? There I made a comparison with sodium chemistry, and then not just sodium chemistry, but also types of sodium chemistry with very abundant cathode materials there. So iron sulfate and iron cyanate, hexacyanate. Then, of course, there's a sacrifice on the amount of capacity you can store per mass. Lithium is the most, it's the smallest atom, which is convenient as an ion. And we see that about 60% of the specific capacity is sacrificed. You gain a bit with the potential you can get from this type of material, and whenever you calculate then theoretically what would your mass energy density become, and then also the action radius, you see that these chemistries can go as far as 68 to 77% of the action radius compared to what the Tesla is currently showing. Then this is not a good story, of course. We already have the batteries, which is Tesla, so why would we essentially go to these chemistries? Well, we might be able to say, okay, well, this is indeed not the best battery in terms of performance, but there's benefits in terms of using sodium, because sodium is much more mobile. You can charge it at much higher rates, effectively, and on affordability. The sodium chemistry currently is not competing with the lithium chemistry anymore because of the scale of the lithium mining done. But whenever scarcity comes up or geopolitical things change, sodium actually can become a more straightforward option for European battery development. Okay. And finally, I want to have a note on the C source, because in every chemistry I currently discussed, either the electrolyte is based on a carbon source. Only the solid state lithium metal battery chemistry would have a sufficient low amount of carbon to scale up and remain carbon neutral, let's say. And this is a problem for electric vehicle batteries in general. For redox flow, we have options in terms of minerals, abundant minerals, but for electric vehicles, yeah, I think there's still a task for academia, but also industry to see how for the coming 12 years we're going to develop a chemistry which makes the carbon durable, let's say. Maybe whenever you start developing batteries which can be recycled a few times, and it will last like exceeding 10 years, you also will have a solution. But currently, not any chemistry is showing this. And then finally, also, what do we envision to be the carbon source anyway? We need to replace at some point batteries. Do we plan to mine it from biomass? Essentially, I think this is still an open discussion, which might need a bit more of attention in this development. Yeah, so to conclude, we have quite some suitable chemistries for electric grid storage. So I think these targets align well with the Green Deal targets. In general, electric vehicle battery strategy is a bit of a mystery to me when you consider the abundance of these minerals and the targets of the Green Deal in terms of climate neutrality. And I think, to meet Green Deal targets, we need to digress from the plans which are currently stated in the European Commission Energy Department. Yeah, and then a more general discussion about the net zero carbon source for batteries should be held. And with this, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for this nice overview of battery technologies, both in the grid and in the EVs. Any questions?
In the first slide, if you could go back to one of your first. There the different battery types. Yeah, this one exactly. First of all, I didn't know what NAQ low was, so that seems to be even out computing lithium.
Yeah, no. So these are so they essentially to compare these chemistries, they base it on a model based on the performance indicators which have been published. NAQ are the test cases for the model itself, let's say. So they put into variable sets, which essentially should show a certain behavior concerning the benefit of having, for example, longer discharge time. So these two are not based on chemistry.
Okay.
Yeah.
The more fundamental question I had is, we're comparing the battery chemistries, but we haven't touched on the topic of round-trip efficiency. And that connects to sustainability a lot, because you may have a very simple organic chemistry, but if the round trip efficiency or for the redox flow batteries, maybe you can mention also that the efficiencies would be interesting to know.
Yeah.
That really makes a huge difference in the amount of energy you need in the first place, in the amount of electricity, and then in the amount of solar, wind, etc.
Yeah.
That we need. So efficiency is probably really a key element. And how does that play into the selection of battery types?
So indeed, the making an electricity also has a cost, and there you have to. Well, currently, in North Holland, they are now speculating on prices, let's say, and putting up a nice lithium-ion chemistry grid battery. I am not sure what they use for this model, to be honest.
But in this model, it's included the round trip efficiency.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And what are the round trip efficiencies we can expect from redox flow batteries?
Yeah. So if some of these chemistries suffer self-discharge, for instance, the vanadium oxide chemistry emits oxygen, and then you use your protection.
Sorry, like 70%. As far as I know.
Yeah. In general.
It's lower than lithium-ion battery for sure. But then the deep discharge is like higher. It can be 100% of depth of discharge, and also the lifetime is like longer as well. So in general, if we consider all these factors, it's still better performs in terms of greenhouse gas emission.
But in general, I think right in the LCOS calculation, the round trip efficiency would be included, right? So, because if I charge 100 kilowatt hour and I can only sell 70 afterwards, then I can only make money with 70.
Yeah. But then the question is, how much did they speculate on the price of the binding electricity?
But that would be the same for all, right? If you do the comparison.
Yeah.
But I agree, right? Are you speculating to maybe get even paid to charge your battery?
Like now?
Or do you have to pay for it?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that electricity prices are negative now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question about the grid storage and especially these flow batteries. So you hear a lot of talk about a vehicle to grid, right? I mean, and if you just add all these batteries in capacity, and basically if we would all drive an electric vehicle, we would have more than enough, let's say, storage for, let's say, day-night rhythms that would all be covered. So where does the flow battery and the grid storage actually come in, you think?
Yeah, so there's one thing which is more into the behavior of people. They tend not to charge their car batteries during the daytime.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have like a 12-hour span between the solar peak and the nighttime charging.
Mm-hmm.
This is huge. And if you consider the transport energy used in the transport sector and the mismatch there, the redox or any grid storage comes into play.
And don't you think that flexible pricing would help a lot there? I mean, if people can make a lot of money by supplying electricity to the grid?
For sure, yeah. Also to start indeed flexible pricing on charging points during the day near offices, near people's working place would help a lot in moderating the electric.
So with smart grids, flexible pricing, and EVs that can be either charged or discharged at
yeah. So I understand.
That's the ideal kind of situation. Yeah. I understand, but
I understand from the electric vehicle perspective, like the battery manufacturers there, they first of all the ISO standard is not able to charge or supply to the grid, electric grid. But also it's hard for a manufacturer to guarantee some performance indicator on their battery whenever it might be intensively used for grid purposes or not. And let's say if you have a battery which is of high value because it's energy dense, and you have a battery which is low value but it is attached to the grid. Also, to start using lithium-ion chemistry for these low-value kind of cycling, charge-discharge cycling, does not make much sense. It's too valuable to essentially burn up the performance of your lithium-ion chemistry.
So it depends. So a lithium iron phosphate battery that is much more stable, let's say long-term, would be much more suitable for something like this than an NCM battery, for example.
Also,
Maybe one question about this chart, because probably, right, the different chemistries are not the same technology readiness level, or also maybe not the same scale of industrialization. So probably prices are also, might be compared like a mass market product maybe to a
that's exactly what has been done here. Because it looks just at the abundance and the buying price of all these minerals.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And
So that's how they.
Yeah. It just took a point in time, then bought hypothetically all these minerals, and then saw which is the most competing chemistry.
So this can be very flexible in time if prices change, right?
Exactly. But also it's the reason that the vanadate option is currently much invested in from startups. Although it's really it's not cheap.
Right.
They speculate on the mining development of vanadate. Yeah.
So how would this picture have looked like if you would go back half a year or a year or something that the prices would be much higher?
I do.
It will be different.
I know that for lithium-ion chemistry, the prices have stagnated, especially last year, for the electric vehicle batteries at least, $150 per kilowatt hour. But other chemistries, I'm not sure.
But did they pick like a point in time, like a day price or a year price, or did they take like an average over a few years? I assume they probably did that.
They're. Have a look at this. I guess this it's online, and it's really an interesting read. This one. Yeah.
And I think what I found really interesting on this one is, right, when you go into long duration storage, right, that is where other chemistries really have a benefit compared to lithium. And the 100 hours, 36 hours.
Yes, it's 1 hour, 100 hours discharge time.
Yeah, discharge.
Yeah, then indeed. There's different winners. That's true.
Okay. Yeah. Final question.
I wonder why didn't you consider sodium-ion battery here?
The?
Sodium-ion battery.
The sodium-ion battery.
Yeah.
Because
it's also considered like a really good candidate for grid storage, and also mainly because it's cheap and longer lifetime.
Yeah. A good one. Yeah. So first of all, this is not my work. I made like a couple of publications which I thought was interesting. What their motivation was, I do not know. Probably because currently the lithium battery pack price is lower than the sodium battery pack price. In terms of performance, that's not much of a difference. Average potential is maybe even somewhat, well, round trip, no, not round trip, maybe somewhat lower for sodium.
Yeah, sodium is lower compared to lithium batteries.
But I'm not sure that they do not.
Probably they just didn't consider.
Yeah, especially since CATL is of course now producing them already commercially and also integrating them in battery packs. So it's certainly it is already used. Yeah.
It's the also thing it has to go hand in hand, but mining companies wait for the industry development and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, it will be also, I think you will also see developments like in relatively cheap cars that don't have to have a high performance, then a cheap battery makes sense. And then if you can make it from a sodium and or lithium iron phosphate, both are of course way less expensive than the NCM ones. Yeah, why not? You don't need the performance and you don't need the long range. So yeah. So there will be, I think, a variety of batteries also in price range, basically, that will come on the market in the next years. Yeah.
Harder for the recycling companies.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, well, also, I mean, well, we'll talking about recycling in a minute, but of course, that's one of the issues. If you have an NCM battery, there's a lot of valuable stuff in there. If you have a lithium iron phosphate battery, less so. So yeah, the whole business case of recycling becomes more problematic. But yeah, let's see. But thanks again for your presentation. Yeah. And then we move on to our next presentation, and that will be done by Maurice Buschmann from Cylib.
Also use the clicker.
I guess.
Okay.
The owner is not in the room.
I hope it will.
Should be okay.
Do you know how to, as I know?
Maybe at Zoom
I
there's
don't know if there's a
A
possibility.
kind of a presentation mode there should be somewhere.
Maybe it's the read mode.
F11.
Sorry?
In the view.
The view thingy, I guess, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
view, and then that's what I thought.
It's Control M.
Control M. Thank you, online audience.
No, then that's when I go to the next. Sorry,
Okay, don't worry.
the next one. But maybe it's not possible with this one.
If you say read mode, yeah, read.
I think maybe it's not enabled.
Oh. If you go to read mode,
For me, it's Control L.
try to Control L.
No, it doesn't.
Control H.
Okay.
checking
Perfect.
a bit.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, thank you for the nice introduction. Nevertheless, I would also like to introduce myself shortly, just to give you a background about me. My name is Maurice Buschmann. I'm 29 years old, and I have studied materials engineering at the RWTH in Aachen. And after I finished my master degrees a few months ago, I started working at Cylib as a process engineer. And I started there about 5 months ago at the start of January now this year. Have you ever wondered what happens to all those lithium-ion batteries from, for example, electric vehicles after they reach the end of life? For electromobility to be sustainable, the circular economy and therefore the recycling of these batteries plays a significant role. The current view and the current situation of the market implies that this is already a big problem right now and will become an even bigger problem in the near future. And Cylib, with its next generation battery recycling, especially lithium-ion battery recycling, encounters this issue. And sometimes it's interesting how the wording of the company is made. Cylib stands, the Cy stands for recycling because we wanted to put the recycling aspect up front. And Lib is the shortcut for lithium-ion batteries, which is why we call it Cylib. So, but now let's get started. I would like to point out our 3 co-founders of the team. You can see them here on the left side. Especially Lilian Schlich and Paul Savani have already met many years ago and become close friends during their studies to become materials and minerals engineer. And from their master studies on, they both focused their studies at the Institute of Metallurgical Process Technology and Metal Recycling, and have done tons of research in the case of lithium-ion battery recycling. Also, both have coordinated and formed a so-called battery group at the institute, which mainly focused on topics about recycling of lithium-ion batteries. Also, both have written their PhD thesis exactly about this topic, which is why they have accumulated together about above 10 years of research in this field. This is what makes them experts in this field, which is shown here by some of the publications that they have done during their research, showing that they research on lithium-ion battery and especially on an environmentally friendly way to recycle them. But even if only 3 co-founders are pictured here on the left side, the team of Cylib is already much bigger. We are already 24 employees, among a few are engineers, which already accompanied the founders during the last years of research and are already experts in the field. But also various other departments, like for example, sales, supply and finance are already staffed, so that the corporate structure is gradually being created right now. I would like to have a quick look into our market that we are facing with our company and with our recycling process. So where do end-of-life batteries, lithium-ion batteries, derive from? And there I would like to note that although our process is suitable for all sizes of the lithium-ion batteries and all different types of lithium-ion batteries, we at the moment are focusing on the traction batteries. And where do these come from? Well, the most known case is electric vehicles, as most of you know. But there are also electric airplanes and other means of transport that are smaller, like for example bicycles or roller that use lithium-ion batteries that will reach their end of life in a few years. Taking into account the estimated sales and the lifespan of the lithium-ion batteries, we can calculate about the feedstock material of end-of-life battery material for the next years. And if we look at the left side, we can see that in 2040 in Europe, there will be expected about 2.1 million tons of end-of-life battery material, which have to be recycled. This feedstock compares to a rather really small recycling capacity of only 370 kilotons at the moment, although we included the planned recycling facilities that are already known that will be planned in the next years. So as you can see, this results in a massive gap of about above 1.7 million tons that has to be filled by increasing the recycling capacity in Europe. But it's crucially important that not only the recycling capacity is increased, also that sustainable and high quality recycling is carried out. Because at present, 80% of those recyclers are so-called black mass producers that basically only do one processing step to recover the precious metals, but for example, do not recover any part of the lithium or any part of the graphite. It is completely lost in the slag and lands on the streets where it cannot be recovered again. So quite a loss actually. But not only the feedstock of the end-of-life material will change sharply in the next years, also the regulations that we have in Europe will not only influence the recycling process, but also the recycled content inside of the process. So the regulations that have already been taken into force contribute to the main key elements that are shown here on the right side. And this is, for example, that the responsibility of the waste management and the financing of the collection and the recycling of the batteries lies on the battery manufacturer, while the distributors from electric vehicles must take back the waste portable batteries. Also, we can see that, for example, by 2025, there's already demanded a minimum recovery rate for lithium at about 35%. So at this point, the so-called black mass producers will not be able to ongo with their process. They will have to stop or revise their process and also recycle some of the lithium. In conclusion, we can see that by 2025, already 65% of the whole cell have to be recycled, and in the year 2030, it will be already 70%. With our process, we already overpassed those regulations by reaching up to 90% recycling efficiency. So all that I showed you is actually just to show that the existing processes do not meet the upcoming demands that we have in lithium-ion battery recycling. Most of the facilities only do one processing step and are not dedicated to the whole processing chain of recycling lithium-ion batteries. And as well, current state of the art is no lithium recovery and graphite recovery at all. At the same time, then many players will not reach the regulations that will come in the next years in Europe. And as I already showed, the forecasted recycling capacity is far below what we need in the next years to recycle the end-of-life battery material that will come from electric vehicles, for example. I think my clicker just gave up. Maybe the battery is gone. Okay, I will just move over here. That's fine. I hope you can still hear me online as well. If not, just put something in the chat and maybe we can change the setup or something. Okay, so this.
Yes.
Perfect. So yeah, I'm just gonna check. Yeah. Okay. So with that, I wanted to move on to show, give a little bit deeper insight of our process that we are using at Cylib, or that our founders developed and that we are still developing even more. It starts with the discharging step, where the batteries are deeply discharged and afterwards dismantled to ensure that no thermal runaway can happen, which is very dangerous. I think most of you already know about the lithium-ion battery thermal runaway. So these steps is to prevent this, and we also use the energy that we, for example, gain from the discharging step to operate some of our facilities. After the dismantling, there comes a mechanical treatment, followed by a thermal treatment, and in the end, we have several hydrometallurgical steps to separately recover all components of the battery. So in conclusion, we recover really all components, also the graphite and lithium. And resulting from our process, on the right side, you can see our unique selling points. So what makes our process unique and what makes it different from the state of the art. And this is, for example, that we have developed an end-to-end process. So we really go through the whole process chain from end-of-life battery material or from production scrap up to the marketable raw materials. And yeah, this is especially important because you can only understand and control the whole process chain when you are doing the whole process chain. If you just do one step, you cannot control what happens in the step before, and maybe the results from the previous step influence the results of the next recycling step, for example. This is something that we can see in our step, because it's not only 5 steps, there are, of course, a lot more subsequent steps there. We also excel at the cleanest hydrometallurgy in the global market. This is due that we are able to recover lithium and graphite on a water basis. And this even leads to a further easier recovery of, for example, transition metals and precious metals that remain in the black mass. So they can be afterwards be recovered wet chemically with little additives. At the same time, we found a way to use the resulting carbon instead of directly emitting all of it. So this means that we are carbon dioxide reduced compared to our competition. And yeah, lastly, what I already said is we recover really all components of the battery and don't leave out some less monetarily important components, like, for example, the graphite. So we also recover the graphite and all components to reach a high resource efficiency and a high recycling efficiency in total. Let us now have a look at the current status of Cylib. How is Cylib's development ongoing? The foundation of Cylib took place in July of the year 2022. And regarding our recycling process, already 2 patents have been filed and are currently pending. And with our first 2 seed financing rounds, we collected over 11.6 million euros from, in total, about 10 different investors. There are some venture capital investors, some business angels, and so we have already a growing network and strong network to help us also to develop our company. Right now, we are currently building our pilot line that is to show the proof of concept that the process that is already proved in lab scale also works in a higher scale. And there on the right side, you can see our production hall when we entered it. So it was empty at this moment, but right now there are already a lot of machines that we ordered, and we are currently building the recycling plant there. The current tasks that we are facing with our company is, for example, the organization. So, for example, to create a corporate structure by getting new employees, for example, as well as a lot of work is done in bureaucracy because, for example, we have to get a permit for our recycling plants. There are a lot of laws that we have to follow, a lot of regulations and other stuff. So this is an immense task as well. But at the same time, we have to check that we have a fast growth because we don't want to lose our pioneering role that we have at the moment. We have the advantage of lots of years of research, a very good process that is far ahead of others in our competition. and that we don't want to lose. But of course, while hiring new people, we always want to look that we don't hire just a skill. We also want to find a fitting person for our team to have a strong team membership and teamwork inside of our team. Next, I would like to head on to some sustainable development goals that we are trying to achieve. The UN, to be more precise, the Department of Economic and Social Affairs has defined 17 goals for sustainable development goals. And with our process or our recycling process, we are mainly facing the 12th goal, which is the responsible consumption and production. With our recycling process, we offer the perfect solution for end-of-life batteries. We have found a way to recycle them eco-friendly and sustainable with a high resource efficiency and with little additives of chemicals, for example, that are harmful. And our products reach battery grade, which means that they can be used to build new lithium-ion batteries again to really close the circle and to run true circular economy as wished. But not only our process is designed to achieve some sustainable development goals. For example, we have many female employees at leading positions, like, for example, our CEO or the head of thermal treatment. That shows that we empower women and also want, for example, gender equality in our company. At the same time, with our recycling process, we contribute to affordable and clean usage of clean energy by providing affordable raw materials for lithium-ion battery production, for example. And of course, with our company, we also provide new workplaces. And yeah, together with our recycling process, of course, we also contribute to the global recycling industry and help to get a carbon neutrality, because we are aware of our ecological footprint and always look that our carbon footprint stays as low as possible. We know that our recycling project and the goals that we have set is an immense challenge and comes with a lot of hurdles, but our dream is to have a close ongoing exchange with politics and science to build up a strong business position by closing raw material supply cycles in Europe. And yeah, our wish is to stay in Germany, although it may be more expensive than in other countries, but this is something that we want to do to counter the structural change as well. And of course, as already mentioned, we want to maintain our pioneering role and build a forward-looking process that closes the cycle in Europe for true circular economy. Together with that, we have a vision for Cylib that is quite ambitious, but we want to become the most efficient and most sustainable battery recycling company worldwide. And at the same time, we want a rapid realization of battery-to-battery purity level, which means that our products will be used again to build new batteries, closing the loop. And also together with our visions comes a high responsibility, because we have to think through the required mobility turnaround in Germany to its fullest extent. And at the same time, the building of the company, according to the ESG criteria, is quite complex, takes a lot of tasks, is very immense challenge, and takes a lot of manpower. In the end, I think there should be a little bit time left, which I would like to use to show a little bit more about Cylib for potential applicants maybe. So where are we located? Just a short information, we are located in Aachen, 2 pictures on the left side. It's close to the border of Netherlands and Belgium, so not that far away from here. But yeah, just to let you know, on the right side you can see again our production hall where we are located and building our pilot line at the moment. Yeah, what can we offer? We can offer a young, diverse and inclusive team, which also has, as we can see, a lot of fun during their work with a lot of team workshops and events that we try to do to even grow our teamwork. Yeah, with our process, we contribute to a climate protection and circular economy. And yeah, in Cylib, you can get a steep learning curve and take part in profit sharing via stock options, for example, and success-based bonuses. And because this whole project is such a big task, we are always looking for more manpower in form of internships, for example, or we also offer research topics, for example, for master or bachelor thesis. So if someone is interested, you can come afterwards. But Nevertheless, we are also already 24 employees. We are also looking for some more employees to build a corporate structure. So, for example, we are looking for an ESG manager that has to be responsible in many tasks, as we can see, that are listed here. But yeah, I don't want to read them off. So if someone is an ESG manager and is interested, this is all findable in our website, as well as for the other positions that are mentioned below. So for example, we are looking for an employee for the raw material sales, for the head of research and development, and for example, for a chemist that supports the laboratory research that we do down in our production hall. All that is left to say is join Cylib for a true circular economy, and instead of further the pleasure. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions left, I would like to answer them.
Thank you. Maybe we can switch places if you stand over there. Then Okay, thank you for yeah, a nice introduction into this this new and vibrant company that you are starting up. Yeah, floor is open for questions.
Thank you for your nice presentation. I was just wondering, how about the cost of the recycling? Is it compared with like mining from the
comparing the primary production of the metals with the secondary? Yeah, we are currently doing it. It's not quite simple to get the life cycle assessments of all the materials, especially all the data. But in comparison with the primary production, the recycling is always better. So this is just a general thing. But in our case, our recycling process is even better compared to other recycling processes. So we have a really much lower carbon footprint compared to the primary production.
Yeah, that's about the environmental perspective. How about the economic perspective? Is it like costly is like more beneficial to?
Okay, yeah, I see. Regarding the costs, as you can see, the regulations that I showed earlier, the battery manufacturers are responsible for the financing of the collection and the recycling of the batteries. So at the moment, the state of the art is that we get money together with the batteries. So someone comes to us and say, okay, I have 10 batteries, I give you, let's just say, for example, 100 euros to recycle them. So first we get money to recycle the batteries, and in the end we can sell the raw materials back to battery manufacturers. So this is our concept, how we gain money.
Cool.
I have a bit of a strange voice today. I was always under the impression that battery recycling until now was more waste treatment, right? You touched upon the battery quality.
Yes.
And until now, that quality is not really achieved.
Exactly.
Because the cost involved, you might do it, but the cost involved don't go out if you have virgin or battery quality materials. Can you say something about that for your folks?
Exactly. For example, so the most materials of our process that we gain after the recycling are already at battery grade, so that we can directly use them for new battery production. But for example, regarding the lithium and the graphite that we recover, they reach technical grade at the moment, so they can be used for other applications. In the case of lithium, for example, we know how to raise the purity to a battery grade. But it's a cost-intensive process, so we will have to evaluate if it's monetarily interesting for us to do this process and then sell the battery-grade lithium or to sell the tech-grade.
So until now, not.
Until now, for lithium, it will be tech-grade at the pilot line and the industrial line. Also, we have discussion with different automotive concerns, and of course, they are very interested in the lithium at battery grade.
Yeah.
So there might be some discussions with them. They will offer us a good money for battery grade lithium. So we will have to see if we go this step or maybe just sell the tech grade.
But you see that it's achievable to get
it is achievable, definitely, and we already know how to do it. It's just
is it just a matter of purification of the
yeah, it's a pure purification process after we have our lithium that is already technical grade, but to reach battery grade.
What is the difference between tech and battery grade in terms of percentages?
To be honest, I don't have the exact number.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I don't want to say anything wrong here.
It's higher.
But I think it will be just
okay, thanks. Any other questions?
From a European legislation perspective or country-wise, Netherlands, Germany, is it possible for you to get lithium waste product from other factories and upgrading your process, because probably your process is a bit better, as you have explained.
So you mean if we can get batteries, for example, from other countries to Germany, or?
Yes, and also from other companies, because you've shown that some factories achieve 35% yield, and yours is much higher.
Yeah, exactly. Ours is much higher thanks to the many years of research that our farming team has done. We would be able to also, of course, collect batteries from all countries, but the problem is that the transportation of these batteries is quite expensive, since they are in a very high risk rate, let's say. So it would be more suitable to build more recycling plants at different locations so that they don't have to be transported that far, because this will be really cost intensive. Yeah.
What are some of the practical challenges you're facing? I mean, we have had this really nice talk before about all the different battery chemistries.
Yeah, this is a very good point, because there are lots of different battery types, especially also lithium-ion battery types, lithium-sulfur, lithium-silicon, solids, electrolyte, lithium-ion batteries. So we are focusing at the moment at the NMC, but we already have done, or my founding team has already done lots of research in the past years also to some other types, like the LFP, the solid electrolyte type. So we are able to already work with some different types. At the moment, of course, not all, but we are also doing research in our pilot plan so that we can keep up with the new tech in the environment. This is our plan.
What are the challenges for you? You're always saying what you can do, but...
Okay, the challenges, yeah, of course, is, for example, if now in the next year there will be a new type of lithium-ion battery that is far better than all that we know right now, then of course it will change a lot in our process. At the moment, our process is made for one type, and if the type changes, we have to adjust our process. We change some different steps, do different treatment. So we will have to see this in the future when it comes this past. Yeah.
Well, just now you mentioned like battery type changes. Does it mean like the battery chemistry change or battery shape, or?
The shape is actually not a big problem, so we can pouch cells, for example, or prismatic cells is no problem. Of course, the chemistry is more important for us, because especially in our core know-how, the hydrometallurgical process step, there's a lot of chemical processes ongoing that are used to selectively win back all the components. So as the chemistry changes a lot, maybe one process that was working for one type of battery does not work with the new type, because there's one element that.
Yeah, but for example, for NMC, like there are different ratios between different elements. That doesn't matter, right?
The ratio, of course, also can affect the process, but not that much as a different type of chemical in the battery. Yeah.
A very low-tech question about the disposing stage, because since battery packs itself are kind of glued, foamed, plastic, difficult to access stuff. Do you just throw it in a shredder and look, or is it very much a manual operation where you really have to rip things apart?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So that's not our core know-how, that's something I want to note, but for the pilot plant, we are planning to do it manually. So really just with hands and tearing apart. And there's a strong glue, for example, in it, so we will have some mechanical adjusted device or something to help us. But for our industrial line, it is planned to automate most of the possible steps. So for example, taking off the case, some of the steps should be able to automate so that we can earn some money there. But for now, manually.
One final question, maybe? Oh,
Yes.
okay.
What year can we expect the announcement for recycle plants?
For the industrial or the pilot line?
The industrial.
Okay, so pilot line will be working at the end of this year, and we are starting 2024 with the industrial line. But I think about 4 years of building, so let's say 2028 is one target year, I think, for the industrial line to be working on.
Just to acknowledge our online audience, there's one question from the online audience.
Yeah, there's one question from Max Dickner, two actually. He says, I missed the first half of the presentation, but do you recycle all battery chemistries, e.g. NMC, LFP, and NCA?
I think a little bit of it already was answered. I hope that he didn't ask afterwards.
Okay, he says it has been answered.
Okay. Okay. So all types of lithium-ion batteries.
And then he said, would better sorting improve the recycling? I think you also covered that.
Yeah.
Would your process be adaptable for batches, e.g. one batch LFP and well, yeah.
Yeah, I think we will have to somehow collect and combine this. Yeah, we will have to check this.
Yes, okay.
Okay, thanks again.
Yeah.
We do have a coffee break planned now, so let's be back here at 14:35, I'd say. Well, we are here anyways. I mean, the coffee is here, so but we'll start again at 14:35. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I know. That's good. Also, I'll pass the break now. Sure.
Ah, the batteries are.
Yeah, that's your own presentation. I do have one, but I have to.
Yes, I have one.
Okay. Everybody back? Online audience back? Oh, you have one. Great. Excellent.
So good, because I was sharing this one with the other presenters. Getting it out.
So this is,
wasn't that part of the circular economy?
Isn't that called give it forward or something like that? Just, yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. So we go to our next speaker, and that is Lukas Torscht, who is a senior consultant at McKinsey, but also a student of industrial ecology. And that's a very nice combination, I think. So I'm really happy that you're willing to share your insights, both from the McKinsey side, but also maybe a little bit from your industrial ecology side. So you'll be talking about sustainable and circular batteries in 2030. So yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the invitation to speak here and to share with you a little bit of insights on mostly, right, this is based on the work that I've done, but also the work that we and McKinsey do in the battery space, and in particular in collaboration with the World Economic Forum and the Global Battery Alliance. The first report from 2019 was actually my first project, which I got really lucky to pick that one. Super exciting, right? To go to Geneva, to meet with and do workshops with all the mining companies, automotive companies, see the different dynamics. Some people super engaged and really pushing for sustainability, others more like observing and seeing on what's going on and where the industry is heading. And then what I'm going to talk mostly about today, or what I'm going to share, are the slides or the graphics that we also published in the basically the updated report for the vision for a sustainable battery value chain for 2030, which was published early this year at this year's Davos conference. But maybe a little bit before we jump into the content, something about myself. I have an automotive background. Of course, in Germany, when you study mechanical engineering, it's there's a very high chance that you do something with automotive. I did it together with a company called ZF. They're known historically for their excellent gearboxes and BMWs and Porsches, but have been transitioning quite aggressively into tech, autonomous driving, but also electric drivetrains. And I did their mostly electric drivetrain design in Germany and in Japan. And currently, right, as René already mentioned, doing basically an educational sabbatical here at Leiden University on getting much more deeper into the academic part of sustainability to bring that back into the business world and engage there and push there with the insights that we know. What I've done the last 4 years at McKinsey is working for clients really from startups. I did a project, for example, for a
mining spin-off of a university, but we benchmarked their process against the other material refining processes on costs and on CO2, and basically that was part of the investor an investment pitch deck that they would now go out and collect money for, but also, right, the big automotive companies who are trying to decarbonize the materials, because we're going to see later, right, battery electric vehicles, of course, are reducing the big share of emissions that come out of the tailpipe, but now the production, the materials are the intensive part. I worked in several circularity projects, a lot on decarbonization, material decarbonization, strategies for energy companies to reach net zero, but also carbon credits, nature-based solutions, and a lot in hydrogen, batteries, and long-duration energy storage from all kinds of angles, from the mining, from equipment, from if this mechanical engineering company should go into production of fuel cell components or not, in which part, from up to whole strategies for whole industries on how to source hydrogen type, for example. A little bit about McKinsey to the introduction. Since the last years, right, the environmental topics have been really pressing the industry, and McKinsey decided to elevate the status of sustainability work to the equal level as digital internally, right? So digitization, super big topic, but now sustainability is on the same level and has been hiring experts on all levels to fulfill this aspiration, right? To become the biggest force in decarbonization in the private sector. And McKinsey has been engaging in sustainability and in the sustainability discussion, also shaping the discussions on several topics from 2007 with the famous greenhouse gas abatement cost curve, which really changed the dynamics in the global discussion about can we even afford climate change, up to all the work that was done with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation on circularity, to, in the recent years, a lot on climate risk, the costs of net zero, the benefits for the society, and so on. But I want to point out two of the recent ones, which are actually now moving right into tackling planetary boundaries, nature conservation, and these kind of topics. And of course, right, I mean, this is always trying to bring these topics, distill them down, and what does this mean for business? Yeah? What does this mean for companies? What does this mean for a CEO? What should they do about the topics? Maybe quickly, the momentum is really clearly in, so where do we serve clients on sustainability topics is really, Europe is a spearhead, but America is really catching up. And I've also done a lot of work in Asia, which is, I personally found it really fulfilling because there's a lot of content that they have to catch up, and they're super thankful for expertise coming from Europe. So really this clean tech hub in Europe, bringing expertise to other parts of the world is really something that we can see. And all types of industries, really everything. Of course, a little bit of focus more on energy because they are the intensive ones, right? There's different pillars that we serve clients on. I'm not going to go through all of them, but basically what the whole battery topic is about, or where we serve clients of battery topics, is a lot of it is basically strategies, how to deal with this topic, how to become either a sustainability leader or how to reduce their impact. But we really encourage them to go from just complying to regulation to really making this your value proposition and expand your business. And then really since a few years, we basically have hubs internally that really focus on certain technologies and where we have amazing technology expertise, right? They have been hiring PhDs researchers and industry experts. So there is really a lot of knowledge being built up, and it's growing quite substantially. Going to the content. So René already talked about when we look in, right, this is our forecast. There's different forecasts, but I think all of them show the exponential curve upwards, right? When you go from this is the demand of batteries, lithium-ion batteries, either on the one hand side by region, on the other hand side by sector, from 700 gigawatt hours per year to 4,700 by the EU. Right, there's different estimates, but this is really driven by mobility. The other sectors also, right? They, I mean, these bars are quite small, but they also multiply. Yeah. So other sectors are also growing. We're seeing in consumer electronics, right? And everyone has now a cleaning robot, and everyone has an electric toothbrush, and I don't know, this and this gadget gets batteries, but the batteries in vehicles, that is what really is driving the growth globally. And not only, of course, right, if the demand grows, also the revenue pools grow, and the business around batteries globally grows significantly, right? So we assume, or we currently assume in this scenario, a 5 times increase versus today in 2030. And you see the biggest chunk is really in the active material and in the cell production. That is where the most value is created when you look into the revenue pools. Yeah. But batteries do face a lot of environmental, social, and governance issues. They still do. I think it is very, very good that there is a lot of scrutiny also in the media and in the public, because otherwise these problems also would not have been tackled in the way that they are currently being acknowledged also by the industry. Right? I want to not go through all of them, but the ones that really I think currently also in the discussions, and right, this is not like 3 McKinsey consultants sitting in a room and thinking about the issues. This is really what is the combined knowledge of the workshops that we conduct, right, at the World Economic Forum and with the Global Battery Alliance, where the Global Battery Alliance has currently 130 members. That these are NGOs like or non-governmental organizations or public organizations like UNICEF, or up to the industry partners, right? Mining companies, automotive companies, cell manufacturers, what they have also been facing, yeah? And I think a few are still a little bit underrepresented in the discussion, right? When you look into the news, it's about lithium and water and child labor in Congo with cobalt. That's, I think, like the 2 really dominant things that you always hear and hear and hear. But we're going to see later also that, for example, lithium is not only coming from Chile. Yeah? I think deforestation, deforestation, biodiversity impacts, that is something that is very underrepresented, especially when we talk about nickel in the public discussion. The new projects in Indonesia, right, where one of the most high biodiverse rainforests are being cut down to open nickel mines. That's something that's not really on the public agenda, I think. And I also think not on the agenda of the automotive company, which goes hand in hand, right, with the topic on protecting indigenous rights. There we still see violations, and the whole topic about, right, transparency of the materials, traceability. It's something that is really still a hard nut to crack. And also the Global Battery Alliance has done a lot of work with their battery passport on tackling this. But also, right, to encourage you, right, in your research maybe to look into the niches that have not been touched by the public discussion yet so much. How much time do I have?
We start at 35, so
About 15 minutes
5
left.
to 10.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Okay. So I think there's always some issues about how to make it work, how to get all this production of demand, like all the demand actually fulfilled by scaling the production. Yeah. Currently, most of that is in China. Yeah, and we have now seen with the geopolitical tensions that maybe concentrating certain things in the world is maybe not a good idea when it comes to resilience, right? Which is one of the key pillars for this vision. Right, when you now want to scale that industry, right? Of course, you have this fluctuation in prices and these very obvious tackle or issues that we put here on the top. But what's really below the surface of the iceberg to really unlock that scaling of that industry are sometimes very simple things. For example, the permitting of a battery plant takes too long, yeah? Or there is no equipment to manufacture battery cells because it's sold out. You cannot buy it currently, or the lead times are so long, or they are lacking something in their supply chain that is being produced somewhere where there is a disruption because of a natural disaster or because of COVID or so on. Yeah, so like sometimes it's really hidden what are the underlying bottlenecks or barriers. Yeah. I have a few slides on basically this topic. I think we touched upon it earlier. Is there enough of these materials? Yes, there is. The question is there enough being supplied to the market at the time when it's needed? Yeah? And what you see on the left-hand side is the supply by countries in 2021 for lithium, in this case, lithium carbonate equivalents. And then the projected demand based on the forecast that you earlier saw. And the base case scenario for my colleagues from MineSpans, which are the mining experts, and they track every mining project in the world. They sometimes they have on certain materials even carbon emissions per mine, yeah, and production volumes and costs and all these kind of things. The base case scenario includes current production and the projected production of those current operating facilities, right? Some are declining, some are maybe ramping up, but also projects that are pretty sick, where we are very comfortable saying these projects will be realized, yeah? And then we see we have a gap, we have a big gap, yeah? There's other scenarios that my colleagues do where they also include announcements, yeah? But if someone just says, we're gonna build a mine here and that's gonna have this output, it's just an announcement, yeah? And we have seen from past announcement not always materialize in actual production, yeah? But so here, for example, it is that they have already, the permitting process is already started, yeah? Or there's already some investments being taken place, these kind of things, yeah? Then for nickel, the picture looks a little bit better, and that's mainly because Indonesia is going to expand massively nickel production, yeah, and there we unavoidably run into issues with biodiversity, yeah. That's something maybe very interesting to research. Like maybe you could optimize the place where you place the mine, where you destroy less, or that you extract more from the same mine, or so on. When we go to cobalt, the picture actually looks exactly opposite. Even in the base case scenario, due to increased output from the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, we would even have an oversupply in 2030. This is mainly because, we expect in our forecast a much lower demand for cobalt than a few years ago, where everyone was expecting high NMCs or nickel, manganese, cobalt concentrations would go in the market. But we see a very clear trend that companies try to avoid cobalt because the cost. Yeah, there is one of the biggest cost drivers in the battery. And on the other hand side, the really bad reputation with child labor, financing warlords, all that discussion about Congo, which I think is extremely unfortunate, because I had right in 2019's interviews with UNICEF in Congo, and just avoiding to buy from there is not solving the problem locally. Yeah? Actually, like buying it from there, but like working with them, having projects which fixes these problems, right? Where you implement childcare, that there is no child labor, because mostly women actually take their children to work because they have no one else to take care of them while they were working. So that's, I think, very unfortunate, a really missed opportunity, but very difficult to communicate, hey, we are doing all these, this and this and this and this to fix the issues. It's easier to say, my battery is cobalt free. Manganese, a little bit undersupplied in the scenario, but I think I don't need to explain much about life cycle emissions of batteries versus ICE. Research is there very clear. Battery-powered vehicles are better, especially when they're powered with renewable energy. And then this one, maybe briefly, is basically a carbon cost abatement curve for batteries or lithium-ion batteries. And you see that some levers do save money, yeah? They're negative, while they abate carbon. So the width of the bar is how much carbon is abated, and that is the cost per ton abated. You see already there some of the circularity levers, right? Recycling from scrap cells, recycled raw materials, which we had the other talk about, right? A lot of decarbonization potential at actually not that high costs. Yeah? And also the whole hydrogen hype. Yeah, hydrogen is expensive. It is the champagne of the energy transition. Don't use it if you don't use it. There's occasions when you drink champagne. There's occasions when you do use hydrogen, but not every day. I think this one I'm going to skip. We had enough talk about it. For the vision, on the one hand side, resilient, right? So we envision a battery supply chain that is gonna fulfill the local demand mostly on six continents, not the concentration that we have today. A 90% carbon footprint reduction is possible until 2030 if the right measures are taken, and there is approximately 6 billion of revenue pools available for, profit, not revenue, profit in the recycling industry. So that's also something that's actually very interesting for governments also to look into. Approximately 18 million jobs in that industry globally, existing and new ones that come online, and approximately 70 gigatons of CO2 cumulatively avoided by road transport until 2050. So that's big. I'm probably over time now, right?
We have 10 minutes, and we also use these 10 minutes for discussion.
Okay.
So
Then I think one interesting thing is that's something that I initiated. Basically taking the planetary boundary, the donut economics concept, and try to map that to batteries. Yeah. Whereas, of course, on the outside, right, we have again the overshooting of the planetary boundaries, but on the inside, we have not only in the original donut economics concept, we have like the social requirements, right? But what about when we apply that concept to batteries? That we have the human needs, yeah. We want to have, I don't know, mobility, yeah. The economic needs, yeah. It also needs to be somehow, low cost option, yeah. You also cannot force out a majority of or a large part of the population, make it too expensive for them. But also you have product requirements, right? So you also need to fulfill certain technical specifications. You cannot go underneath it because no one will buy an electric vehicle that has a range of 10 kilometers. Yeah? And there is basically 10 transformational success factors that help us to stay within that boundary. And this is really something that has been developed, right, with all the members of the Global Battery Alliance, with our daily work that we do on batteries across the globe, in all parts of the value chain. And I think I want to focus or point out especially the topic of sourcing 24/7 renewable energy for the production, not certificates and not annual balances. Yeah, because currently when companies buy renewable energy, they buy a balance, an average of the consumption over the year. They don't buy it that kilowatt hour of energy is produced in a low carbon way when I consume it. And that has a delta of up to, so you claim you have 0 carbon when you do this, but when you look into every hour of the year, for example, for solar power or for wind power in Germany or in California, it's only 70% reduction, yeah, of the carbon actually that you emit, because you're still buying dirty energy from the grid. And then, right, minimizing all the environmental impacts beyond carbon, right? So like all the super cool interest topic, I think, research topic is, right, how could we like balance, yeah, these different planetary boundaries and different chemistries, right? Because the discussion currently is only really about carbon in the industry, and I think we need to move away from that to others, right? Water also a little bit. Gonna skip this. Recycling, we also talked about. Yeah, I think this is also, yeah. Thank you so much. And
we can switch places again and turn the camera. Yeah, thanks, Lukas, for a very nice overview of well, sustainability in general with regards to the battery supply chain and what is to come basically in the next 20 years or so. Any questions?
So this 90% decrease in carbon. Obviously, you rely on research development at the moment for that.
There is no crystal ball in that.
No, of course.
There is something like dry cathode coating, which is not really super far away, right? That's on the edge of being industrialized. That's, for example, a new technology, and otherwise there is not much.
It's all existing.
I mean, it's right. It's you need to stop burning fossils. So along the whole process, and you need to. The recycling is also, I think, much further advanced. We can do much more currently already, and there is a lot of improvement potential, yeah, still, but that's probably quite conservative.
You also showed, for example, that a large chunk of the gain that you can have is this part, let's say, is coming from using recycled materials. So how much of the 90% you think is coming from actually using recycled inputs? I mean, if you look at the 90% that you just gave, right, the 90% reduction in CO2 footprint. So a large chunk could actually come from using materials, right?
I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it was something of approximately a third or something, or even more, that recycling materials can contribute to that. Yeah. But the problem is, there's not much recycling yet, right? I mean, if you look at the growth numbers, recycling is going to be in 15 years, there's going to be probably like large-scale quantities of recycling, battery recycling material.
So maybe the question is the vision is a prediction with all the knowledge that we have, or
so the
thing, of course.
Yeah, so the vision, this one is something, right, that of course is a stretch. Yeah, you're not going to reach it when you just continue as today.
No,
yeah, but that is something that seems very feasible. If you
based on a lot of things that are in the report.
Yeah, thanks for your global view on the battery industry there. I was wondering, you talked a bit on the mining activities globally, nickel from Indonesia and other sources. And you also put down a forecast on where are the opportunities for industries in which continent, let's say, in one of the earlier slides. I was wondering, like, yeah, definitely. Would you say that Europe, by having stricter regulations compared to other continents, would has some sort of not in my backyard kind of viewpoint, since they like on the cell and back level, yeah, they align, but then on mining activities, it's a bit smaller. Or would you say like it's based on also where the minerals are just situated?
Yeah, I think that has changed, right? The whole, we're not going to do mining in Europe. I think that many people understood will not be a strategy that's successful in the future. And when I look into the news, right, there's so many announcements. We're going to do now battery material mining in Portugal and in Sweden, and it's almost like a run. Everyone wants to open a mine now in Europe, which we shut down right earlier because we didn't want it, because it has the environmental consequences. But I think also the European strategy is like we source some of that back. Yeah? But the question there is also, how much do you need to do new? I think there's way too little discussion also maybe how to just use less, like need less for the same functionality later onwards, right? That you maybe don't need that much. And the urban mine is also something, maybe not for batteries so much yet, because there's not much, compared to the demand, not so much stock available. But
there will be in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks. You have a question or?
It already was answered.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that looking at raw materials, I think probably lithium was the worst case with a 55% deficit. So don't you think that's somehow the world is going to solve it? I mean, of course, looking at figures like this will be a huge push for mining companies to start investing in lithium, or perhaps also substitutes being developed like the sodium-ion battery, and how would that impact the figure that we see over here?
So I think it definitely is, right? So we talked about, or René talked about this earlier. The time delay between price signals and how long it takes to open a mine, is something that mining companies are very unsecure, right? Is this really going to be the case? Is there maybe much less electric vehicles? Then I'm opening a mine and cannot sell it. So that is definitely a really, really tricky thing. What gives stability there is, of course, when certain larger economies, for example, decide on certain electric vehicle regulations, for example, that gives certainty, right? If I know in this year I cannot sell a combustion anymore, it will be electric, and then of course it's a question about which chemistry, but that gives definitely certainty for investments that have a long lead time. And your point on alternatives, right? Sodium-ion is, we see very, very big momentum there in the industry. The interest on that topic, getting informed about the topic, trying to do something now about it is absolutely accelerating the last months. Which, when you have asked me like 1 year ago, I would have said, oh, maybe, I don't know.
And now they're on the market.
But yeah, exactly. So they're all in the market, right? A few companies in China have it also going to put it into cars, which many people thought it's not going to be, it's not working. But what I also learned from my engineering background, right, is you always need to look into the final product. Yeah, that's the same discussion with LFP. Many people thought, oh, it has a too low density for application in vehicles. Yeah, on the cell level, but you need to compare it on the application level. What if I design a whole battery that works in a car with LFP versus NMC is that I need much less materials for crash crash elements, right, that absorb energy, because LFP batteries don't have the high risk of not the high runaway temperatures and so on. So you save materials. That's also money. Yeah, that saves space, which means you can put actually more cells into the vehicle. You need less material for example, cooling elements, because you need to control the high runoff temperature. You need less material for fire cases. So that's all material that is saving the weight on the volume side, which means on a pack level, LFP actually performs pretty good. Not on the same level, but so good that it's the cost benefit is so much better.
And
I
the
think the same
degradation.
discussion we need with.
If you look at the lifetime of the battery, LFPs have a degradation relatively quickly in the beginning, and then they stay stable at 80% for basically eternity. So that also makes a huge difference in well, the value of the battery also in the longer term, and whether you can use them for second life, for example.
Yeah. And I think, right, a really flipping moment in the mind of people were when, okay, Tesla announced their Model 3, right, will be LFP batteries in China. People were like, why only in China? Okay, because it's available there, the production, but then also, okay, they're also going to export it. So it's, I think there will be a wide range of different chemistries for different cars, right? The Porsche, right, will maybe have the super crazy chemistry with all this technical specifications. But the average car doesn't need that. Doesn't need the fancy materials, doesn't need the fancy chemistry.
Final question?
Regarding this figure, this does not include the possibility of recycling lithium. So, for example, the gap of 55%, if all the lithium would be recycled, could be closed. In my opinion, quite big, so the gap would not be this big anymore, but this is not included.
No, there is no recycling here. That's true. Yeah. Right, especially lithium is currently a tricky one to recycle. So advancing there, right, can close the gap.
Okay, thanks again, Lukas. Then we go to our final speaker, Chengjian Xu from TU Delft, postdoc researcher, also did his PhD here in Leiden. So we are welcoming you back here.
Thank you, René.
Are you going to use your own laptop, or is the presentation on?
The presentation is on there, so
okay.
if that's okay with you.
Because then they can also, people online can also see.
That's okay on the PDF.
But maybe it's not open anymore.
Maybe you know where it is.
I think I have to take this one away because it has this master thesis.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, if that's okay with you?
Yeah, if not the PDF version can work.
Yeah, we just had it working, I think. Control 8. Oh. Yeah. I think it's about.
Yeah, that works, I think.
Make it
a bit smaller, yeah.
If you like make a presentation.
Otherwise, you could maybe join the meeting and then present it. Because this is the presentation mode, I think, as far as we can view again. Nah. This would be it, and then you could go like this.
Can you see the graph still? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
It would work. Yeah, it would work. Yeah.
Okay,
great.
Is it big enough? Yeah, we don't have one.
Okay, you don't have one. Okay, it's okay.
I'll put the camera to you so you can stand here. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the invitation. I'm quite happy to here to share my previous research. So, little bit my background is I currently working as a postdoc researcher at TU Delft. I'm focusing on the solar panels sustainability. Yeah, this is a totally different topic. But today I'm going to have two aspects about the battery sustainability. First one is about the challenge for EV batteries. We need a lot of raw materials demand to build up for the EV mobility transition. Second is if we build up such a larger scale EV transition, we probably can use batteries for energy storage for our renewable electricity generation. So a little bit research background. If we why we want to have a transition from the ICEV, that is combustion vehicle, to PHEV and BEV. PHEV is a hybrid version between the fully battery electric vehicle and the ICEV. So from the graph, we can see that if we have same costs for the different vehicle options, can see the greenhouse gas emissions for fully battery electric vehicles can be reduced a lot, especially even we have some battery production emissions as an additional part compared to the ICEV. So the one thing to note, we need the clean electricity to supply for the electric vehicles to make this figure really happen in our society. So sometimes we need to think about some extreme cases. We even have some, if we have a higher battery emissions, that means the battery production can be very energy intensive. And then the battery electric vehicles can even have a very comparable, even a little bit higher emissions than ICEVs. Probably the first priority is because of the fuel use in a battery electric vehicle, and the second is battery emissions. So we need to research into the battery emissions to reduce the emissions to ensure a sustainable transition to electric vehicles. So some introduction to my research questions. Today I give the blue color with two research questions I'm going to introduce today. So basically we have I built some scenarios on future EV fleet scenarios until 2050. So it's a relative long term, and also some build battery chemistry scenario to discuss short term or long term which battery chemistry to take place in our future market. And then we have some battery technology modeling, how the batteries are going to use that's related to the consumer driving behavior. Again, next step, this driving modeling can be input to the battery degradation modeling. So we can estimate the battery residual capacity at their end of life, because that's also key information if we want to use battery for the secondary use as a stationary energy storage service. So then we firstly we have EV fleet scenario until 2030. We use the International Energy Agency fleet scenarios, but we also anticipate expected growth until 2050. Probably we can, in the step scenario, that means in the state of current policy, we may achieve 1 billion electric vehicles in our society as a stock, or even if we want to achieve a sustainable development scenario in 2050, we might achieve 2 billion electric vehicles. And the thing is, if we know that PHEV and BEV and as two parts for the EV stock, BEVs will be the mainstream. And the one thing to note is the future will be growth, but we don't know the exact growth rates in the future. There's a lot of discussion on to be here. So if we want to achieve a higher EV fleet penetration in our vehicle stock, we need to think about the which chemistry you want to use to satisfy the consumer's driving demand, or if we want to achieve a higher EV fleet transition. Probably this was done 2 years ago, but the basic idea is we in 2020 we have several traditional chemistries. NCX, that means NCA battery, or MCM battery, that means NCM series. We have different element ratios from 111 to 955. Basically, the issue is want to reduce concentration of cobalt in the batteries because of the cost issue related to the cobalt. And also we at the same time we reduce the cobalt content, we can increasing the specific energy in terms of watt-hour per kilogram. This for the cathode, or we can use LFP as a scenario. At that time, already some commercial companies want to use LFP battery. They can also provide the comparable energy service for the electric cars. That's for the short term until 2030. And if we have a long-term perspective, we can also use solid-state battery. The most two obvious is the lithium air or lithium sulfur batteries. They can have comparable specific energy to the fossil fuels. That means if we have commercially successful in these two batteries, that means electric cars can have the same range as a combustion vehicles. So we designed these scenarios, three scenarios that's possibly happen in the future. Then we're going to build up the battery stock dynamics modeling with some inputs of the how many EV fleet we want to achieve in the future, and battery and vehicle lifetime, and also modeling of the different material composition of different battery chemistry. That's also combined with battery market shares we are expecting in the future. So clearly we can see that we will see an increasing factor of 20 to 30 for all the critical or significant raw materials between 2020 to 2050. And if we compare this material demand, for example, lithium, to the global annual production in 2019, we can see the EV sector only can consume all the lithium production in next decade. Or for cobalt, again, is the next decade. But for nickel, we can see because of that we have much larger annual production for nickel. We can see next 2 decades we need to scale up the raw materials production. So in the short term, we meet challenges, but we have some probably from the figure we can have some solutions or potential solutions. Firstly, we can have battery chemistry transition from the to the lithium air or lithium sulfur batteries, or with low cobalt and high nickel consumption batteries. In the figure A, it shows material demand, but figure B, we also show the recycling potential that the raw materials can be available from the end-of-life batteries. Clearly, we can see 1/3 of the primary material demand can be supplied by the secondary production. If we can see that in the next 3 decades. So next topic is about the how we can quantify the energy storage potential of EV batteries. Actually, I built a model which consists of 3 sub-models. One is the EV use model. That's several elements. Basically, want to know how these batteries are used, under which conditions. That's input parameters can be used for the battery degradation modeling, which is on a collaboration with NRO, US National Renewable Energy Laboratory. They transfer this using the EV use behavior parameters to the battery technical parameters such as state of charge or temperature or the cycling the rates. So we can then know the capacity per battery in use, but also the capacity when batteries are retired or come to end of life. And then further combined with dynamic battery stock modeling, we can use how many batteries still in use or the scale of the batteries come to end of life. So basically the energy storage potential for EV batteries, we can consider two parts. One is to the vehicle grid function for EV batteries, contribute to the grid storage potential. Second part is the second use model. We can collect it and repurpose it, and we have some utilization rate, so we can see accumulated to combine these small batteries to a larger scale, can provide energy storage, stationary energy storage service. So these are two parts. So come with the results. We use the yellow bar for the second use energy storage potential, and blue bar for the vehicle grid potential. We can see in the short term, vehicle grid potential can technically play a dominant role, but afterwards, as we have much available end of life batteries from the EVs, so we can see the much faster increasing the second use potential. So the number we can achieve is over 30 terawatt-hour, which is big technical capacity. If we compare to some grid storage demand in the future, I know this storage demand is depending a lot of our power system in the future. So probably the ARENA, International Renewable Energy Agency or Storage Lab, they have estimation in the range is much below the capacity can be technically available from our electric vehicle sectors. So the scenarios gives a random step scenario, or you come to the sustainable development scenario, or even you choose different chemistry can have very little difference between the technical capacity for the energy storage. So in detail analysis, we see which factors determine largely to limiting the vehicle stock capacity of the EV batteries can be used for the vehicle grid. So the first dominating factor is the driving demand. When driving the electric vehicles, it cannot be used for technically cannot be used for the vehicle grid. When the batteries start parking, we still need to think about some technical constraints. We avoided the use of the PHEV for vehicle grid potential, and also the technically some battery integration. This capacity have been lost. We cannot have this capacity come back again for the function of the grid service. So in the right figure, we consider some social factors. We don't know the complicated specific factors which can link to the vehicle grid participation, but we turn the question in another way. We see if we increase from 10% to 100% participation rate, how's the estimated vehicle grid potential can look at. If we see SD and CX scenario, we can see if we only use EV batteries to realize the vehicle grid potential, we can satisfy under 40% of vehicle grid potential. We can satisfy the global grid storage demand. So the vehicle grid participation rate is key. Need more research how we can achieve 40% participation rate for EV consumers. So the next slide will be for the second use potential. So again, we use same methodology, but we compare the annual production and cumulative production on the different scenarios. So we can see the thing is again we can still only use the second use of the EV batteries at end of life to meet the grid storage demand, but under specific conditions don't neglect these conditions. We need to 100% collection rate, and we need technically to combine these all single batteries into a big battery that can be suitable for our stationary energy storage service. So this gives us a potential to explore as a secondary use for EV batteries. So next slide also shows something about if we compare vehicle to grid and second use potential, how the EV batteries as a whole thing to contribute to the grid storage demand. So we can see something like the vehicle to grid potential can be very important. So if we you can see how we can stand in which block to meet the grid storage demand. It depends on the regional electricity market and which level you want to the EV batteries play in a role in the future power system. So the last two slides, I would say a lot of research has been think about the recycling. So that's a lot of basically they have different recycling roads. From the pyro recycling, use some thermal high temperature to recover the elements, especially some are economically can be recovered, some are not recovered because of technical constraints. Hydro recycling, we improve the recycling elements for aluminum and graphite, or potentially we can also recover it. We use some basic chemical elements, and now we some laboratory can have considered the reactive recycling. They can keep the loop as short as possible. So that's basically from the life cycle environmental perspective, we can keep a lowest environmental impacts. So apart from the recycling, we should also think about the whole value chain from the production. We think about the future mining, how we can achieve the efficient materials to supply for the battery EV transition, but also at a lower cost and environmental costs. Battery production technology, we think about the material production energy efficiency and the use of the energy for the battery production. For example, Tesla has set up the battery production plant. Alongside, they also build up the renewable energy, solar energy production. That solar energy can be directly used for the battery production. So in the use phase, think about the relation, how we can batteries can interact with the power system, but also in the research should also include the battery use behavior and degradation. So that's a part we need to consider. So some final slides with some conclusions. So in this, my research more consistent model is built to understand the challenger aspect, also the opportunity side for the EV batteries. So the methodology parts I try to contribute in the sustainable batteries. I can hopefully consistently combine the material flow analysis, prospective life cycle assessment, and also battery technical modeling. And second point is EV batteries meet some challenges, especially the material demand and scaling up the production capacity along all the supply chain. So all the supply chain from mining, different supply chains should be scaling up at a high speed. So that's no challenge for EV batteries. And then the last point, we can find the EV batteries alone can provide a huge energy storage capacity to the power system if we design a power system market that can be really realized in our society. So I think that's it.
Thank you. We can switch places again. Thanks. Yeah, nice overview. Lots of information, great publications, of course, but I'm sure there are some questions.
Yeah, thanks so much for your nice talk. It's, this paper, I read it also with much interest. If I understood correctly, like in terms of the reuse or repurposing, like comparing LFP with the NMX kind of chemistries, there's not a clear difference, let's say, in these two cases. In terms of what would be a logical choice to reuse and or repurpose.
Yeah, from the viewpoint of different stakeholders can be different.
Okay.
If that's some stationary energy storage company, they want LFP batteries because the LFP battery can still last longer the cycling life. Because cycling life is because batteries have two aspects. One is the calendar life, another is the cycling life. LFP has a big advantage in the cycling life because the cycling can be a charger of the energy and discharger of the energy from the grid and keep the grid stability. Another point is basically they will accumulate the LFP batteries with LFP batteries. Basically, they will not combine LFP and AMC together. There's something very confusing how do you deal with such a situation.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Right.
Any perspective on when I look into your blue and red sensitivity analysis, right? I would probably say you want to maximize second use from a circularity perspective first, before that's going to reach a really high level. That means that we don't need such a high participation rate. Is that something that you also looked into?
I think the overall view is positive. We want to have more participation or utilization of the second use battery. Obviously, they have some competence between the vehicle grid potential and the second use potential, but they also have time gaps. So which commercial level can be achievable at a low cost, and also consumers can accept such technology. I think the current stage of the vehicle grid potential is hard to achieve. At the first stage, we can still use some a second use potential to complement as an overview of the battery as a whole topic to provide the contribution to grid storage. But in the long term, the thing is that still competence between reuse or recycling, which is more friendly, linked to the chemistry. So in the long term, we have a larger scale, more available battery capacity from end of life. But the thing is, we should handle. Where grid option is, can we choose to handle this? Because either you don't handle this, is okay, or you choose to want to have the benefit, it's also okay. But for the West, end of life battery West, from the point of view of the EV consumers, you should be for energy storage or direct for recycling companies. Yeah.
And there's a really interesting chicken egg problem, right? On the one hand side, you want clean energy first to produce clean batteries, but you need batteries to have really high renewable energy shares. Yeah. And if you want to repurpose second life batteries from vehicles to have the grid or the clean energy to produce the clean batteries, you first need the vehicles. Yeah, so it's so you really need the vehicles now to actually have this whole thing going.
Yeah, it's likely you can design some scenarios. You avoid the option of vehicle grid to see the whole life cycle benefits, or even you have some vehicle grid options, but they have some battery degradation. You lost some benefits. You create some harmful effects for the stationary storage. So the point is which lifetime you can choose. These batteries go to end of life. or which kind of batteries go to direct recycling. So you have some overall environmental-based or cost, economic cost, which way to select the battery go different ways, or which battery from a production perspective has already designed to use for vehicle grid again, secondary use, and then recycling to the secondary raw materials production.
Thanks. Other questions? Yeah, sure.
What do you personally think is the biggest issue to really unlock the participation? I think we touched upon one earlier, right? Is the vehicles need to be plugged in at the right time. Yeah? So you probably need chargers at work because you're driving to work, the car is sitting there when the sun is shining. Then you need chargers that have bidirectional charging capacity or functionality, because current wall boxes that we install, they cannot do. Most of I think, I don't know of any that you can buy on the market that has bidirectional charging already. Some cars can already do it, yeah, but only, I think, only the Hyundai and Kia. Yeah. So is it really, we need to like double down on make it technically feasible from the wall boxes? Or is it that we maybe need super innovative business models that a charging provider says, hey, between 10 and 2 o'clock, you can charge at super reduced prices, or maybe for free because they're getting maybe paid because they're offloading load? Or what's in your opinion the levers to really have people participate?
But if the second is true, the first will happen, right?
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, if there is a business model, if there's money to be made, then all the technical stuff can be done.
Yeah, the current problem with like these bigger charging stations is that they're just losing money even right now when they charge 80 cents per kilowatt hour in a fast charger in Germany. They're still.
But if the business model would be there, if you could make money by plugging in your car, then at least the consumer is quite willing to do so if the infrastructure is there. And of course, then there might also be a financial incentive for building the infrastructure. But I mean, you have to make money. I mean, if you lose money, nobody's going to do it, right?
Yeah, but the current, right, all the chargers that we're now installing, they cannot do it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We're putting a lot of materials, infrastructure, money in.
Yeah.
Which is not capable of doing this. What research has been telling us for probably 2 decades that bidirectional charging is a good thing.
But sorry for jumping in. The question was to you.
So the thing is, I heard about the policy regulations don't allow the single EV user to participate in the market because it's still fossil fuel-based society as a regulation over there. This is the first option might be need to overcome. They have the concept of the aggregator. You can open up a new community. And then these EV batteries can be aggregated at a larger scale as a virtual level power storage, really strong power can enter the market. And then the consumers' participation, they have some benefits. And at the same time, the batteries can be designed at a very low cost. That already research show that you design with smart grid protocol or smart grid used for the smart charging for the vehicles can enhance the battery lifetime. So that's how you design big benefit. At the same time, you get some revenues. A lot of time the batteries can free parking at our society. It's a very essential asset in our society. How do you make a best use? Because we already put a lot of the efforts in internal production, energy production to get out of the so many battery production in the global bidirectional charger is another thing because previous people have researched on the vehicle grid potential, but the battery production, EV production, EV production companies, they don't consider to handle the bidirectional charger. So the EV stock already in the society, you really need to upgrade to make the traditional charger to the bidirectional charger. That's a penetration another challenging.
maybe a suggestion. The solution might be a hybrid system whereby like Battleizer wants this, you have plenty of solar power, your battery is full, you generate hydrogen, or you use the energy to store that energy by using a pressure pump to build pressure, and once you need the energy, release that pressure and convert the energy back to the battery. So I think we need to look into not only to battery energy, but also other energy sources, like storing the energy in material or in gases, heat. Yes, because that it could be that it's logical and also cheaper to do that. I don't know if it's economically feasible or economically.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting questions that you then run into is then you're building a system that you only use, let's say, a couple of hours a day, maybe only a few, only in summer, maybe when there's a lot of solar energy. So there's always, from a cost perspective, you would rather have something that is continuously operating from the capital cost perspective. But some of these technologies might actually make sense also from an economic perspective, even if they are only used certain times of year or certain moments. Yeah. Okay, well, with that, I think we come to, we first thank you, Ian, for the presentation. We come to the end of this session this afternoon. We do have some presents for the speakers, but we will hand them over in a minute.